Hello, everyone. I'm Mikiko James, Director of Programs for WIF, and I am speaking today with the incredible women behind Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, Kasi Lemmons, Director, Daysha Broadway Editor, Maureen Crowe, Music Supervisor, and Chanda Dancy, Composer. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm honored to be in this conversation with you as we kick off Black History Month and also work to ensure that Black women creatives are working all year round. I'm excited to hear from all of you about your career journeys and, of course, this beautiful honoring story of the voice of our generation, Whitney Houston. So let's get started. Maureen and Chanda, you both had the incredible, weighty responsibility of creating the musical context of this film. I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey and process, especially given that this is a story about potentially the greatest singer of our time. I know both Kasi and Daysha were both integral parts of creating that context as well, so would love to hear your perspectives on creating that musical landscape. But Chanda, why don't we start with you?
As far as the score, it was essential for me to confer to the people who really understood Whitney and loved her, and that's Kasi. And of course, Daysha and I growing up on Whitney's music, the three of us, when I first started scoring, the three of us did sit down together through Zoom. And the thing that we really, and with Kasi's guidance, first of all, was we wanted this score to truly honor the full spectrum human that Whitney was. She was a great human. She was more than just a pop star, America's princess. And Kasi can speak more of this. Kasi was familiar with her family and that dynamic and the neighborhood that Whitney grew up in. So it was important for us to remind the audience why we loved her, but to also show who she was. Mm-hmm. And she was beautiful in all ways, in her ups and in her downs.
I love the fact that you and Kasi had talked earlier about making it really showing how iconic she was.
Yes.
Like that this was going to be a score for the a score that really held that, the power of her life and her influence, and in such a beautifully emotional way.
Exactly.
And,
like a big old-fashioned score, with big emotions and melodic. That was really important.
Yes.
When Chanda and I first started talking and we were all talking together about this, we really wanted something that was melodically beautiful because that seemed fitting for Whitney,
Exactly.
The filmmakers a lot of times were, thinking, oh, we have so many songs. We have 30 songs in the film. And in Bohemian Rhapsody, there was very minimal score in it. And Kasi was very adamant, like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Don't let them anybody say we're not going to have a composer on this, or we're just going to do no. This is going to be a signature piece, and she deserves nothing less. And and I think all those details that both Daysha and Kasi and Chanda brought into the film in terms of, what kind of songs, what kind of music was in her world, when she was preparing to go, to become a pop star, you know what I mean? And so, and Daysha can talk about that, like, using Luther Vandross for, scenes, and Stevie Wonder and, Chaka. These are all musicians and artists that were very close to Whitney in terms of her day-to-day. She had a dinner party, they would be at the party, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Initially, I thought that if there were going to be artists in the film that weren't Whitney Houston songs, then it had to be artists that Whitney would listen to. And I think I went through a lot of her interviews, and she was very specific about which artists she listened to and which she did not. And but also just artists that were on her level. Chaka Khan was planned. I think that was scripted, but Luther Vandross and Stevie just felt right for the time, right for the era, tonally correct, like helping bring us into her story. But when it came to the score with Chanda, it was like Kasi said, we just wanted something big and beautiful and epic and sweeping, from the start to the end. And something that I still, hum along to every now and then. I can hear the genius theme, as Chanda called it, in my head. I can just hear it. And it's because it's melodic, which is something you don't get from films as much anymore. So I really appreciated that about our score.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Chaka was something Kasi and I discussed in production because they had to shoot it to going. So we talked about Luther, we talked to different people, and Whitney is on that Chaka recording. She actually singing backgrounds on it. It was one of her first professional gigs. So again, Kasi had all that thoughtfulness and the team that was in there of just being very specific, in terms of why is this artist important? Why is this song important? Why does it all, support Whitney, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really, it speaks to, the specific study and of course, Kasi, you being intimately familiar with her and her family and story. I love that so much thought was put into that creation. I also wonder if you thought about, her music being so iconic and so recognizable, how the audience would be reacting or what they would be expecting in Whitney's story. How did you decide, I think also both in the chronology and the way the music was delivered. I love the sequencing of how you went through the timeline. How are you thinking about the audience and what they would be responding to, both in terms of music and story?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of it was scripted, but we had to, Daysha and I kind of had to make some decisions too about how long things were going to play. And we made those with producers, of course, and Clive. And, were we going to play songs full length or which ones it was okay to just kind of hear a little bit and instantly the audience is like, oh, I love this one, but which we're going to play out because we needed that emotional journey. It could actually help push the story forward. And Daysha and I figured out ways that we could use the music to kind of go through the story and make it part of the storytelling. And so that's what was really exciting about working with, full songs.
Yeah, and sometimes the brevity is more exciting, right? So like you just hear a snippet of Saving All My Love for You and it just triggers a memory and for the audience. But then, we keep going and then we give you another song and then another song. And it really goes, okay, it kind of orients the audience to the audience that was there because they know that era. So they go, okay, immediately know exactly what year it is. They can place themselves there and then we can move on and we can say, okay, that's where we are. And here's what happened. Because then, things like How Will I Know, you recreate the music video so beautifully and Naomi performs it so beautifully. And it's something that we know the audience is expecting, right? There's no way you're not going to have that moment in the film, but then it becomes, okay, how long is that moment in the film and how long are we going to stay there? So we just ask ourselves, what's the question? What's the story? What's the point? And the point is she's changing who she is and giving the audience this American princess. So we need to get through that song to give that story beat, and then we have to move on. And then other times, I think Why Does It Hurt So Bad was something that we kept going sort of back and forth on with everybody because it's such a beautiful song that I think I didn't really realize until I got the stems for it. We were so lucky we got Whitney's raw vocals for that song, and you can just listen to just her untouched vocals for that song. And I asked Kasi, I was like, what if we put the stems, like just the strings underneath this scene? And it feels like that moment in the film feels like Waiting to Exhale. It feels like it takes you back just because of that sort of melody and because of the, the pain she's feeling and everything. But the strings playing under the scene kind of nails it, and it was kind of unexpected, but we put it in and it worked. Thank God.
It is pure Daysha Broadway. I mean, she's like, listen to this, and it just plays the strings from. It's amazing because you're integrated in the song. You're not quite hearing it or in the same way, but when you just listen to the strings, I was like, wow, that's mind blowing. That's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And then we actually used it to score the scene, and it works together with Chanda's score, because it has that big lushness, and yet takes you back to kind of a different era, in her life. It's great.
Very inspired choice for sure. Daysha, you had a lot of inspired choices for music, and also just helping me with the score, or kind of like a shorthand of how big we want certain moments to be. And yeah, it was just really a dream working with you and working with Kasi on this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chanda kept calling me a musical editor, and I was like, what does that mean?
It's a very,
Yeah.
very good thing.
Yeah.
You are,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Well,
And Maureen also, Maureen would present these choices of songs, you know, and like the
Mhm.
Papillon, that was a big choice. You know, we had a few that we were listening to, and all of a sudden it's like, no, it has to be Papillon, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I love what they did in the film. It really, you know, I mean, all these fantastic women on this, you know, I know Whitney would just, well, she does adore, you know, Kasi and different things like that, but to give it so much care and attention of every detail, and even that, like, you know, why does it hurt so bad? You really get drawn into why she you know, not even why the song meant to her, but what she felt. Just even by having the instrumental, you're in her space. And you really needed that in the film at that time, just to, you know, have that weight of like, I'm exhausted, you know. It's like, this was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd be living happily ever after, and it's not so happy, you know. And I think that's what the audience really appreciates, the journey that Kasi and Chanda and Daysha kind of put everybody in. It's that you're in her world, you're as intimate as you could possibly be through her music, to really being under her skin as she's going through this stuff. That's why I think people get chills when they see the film in a theater. It's just goosebumps after goosebumps, but not because of the songs, because the emotion she's imparting and how much it's supported in the film, and bringing that to life.
I think that's a really salient point. And even her saying she wants big songs, right? But big doesn't always mean beautiful or pretty or shiny, right? Big was big emotions, big swings in life, all of the trauma and struggle she went through. Kasi, I wanted to talk a little bit with you about that, because I think you didn't shy away from that pain, right? I think this really is her story, and the hardship she also went through as someone who was the provider for many people, including those in her family and her relationships, the repression that she had to go through in her own journey around love and relationships, and then layered with this incredible musical career. I think you did such a masterful job in like giving us the pieces of that where we could see the depth of her humanity. And I think the music really lends itself to like helping us along that journey with her. How did you think about, you know, the balance of the film, knowing that we were going to be going in these really big swells of emotion with her? What were you thinking in terms of putting those parts together?
Well, I was very interested in her as a real human being. You know, I think it actually makes it more relatable, but also this is really her story. When we realize that somebody's a human being, that they struggle and they're trying, and sometimes they fall back and then they get up and try again, that you know, it's easy just to think of celebrities with incredible talent as being just that thing, you know. And when you realize, no, this is a woman who was supporting her family, and you know, who loved her child, and had these wonderful, loving, complex relationships, I think it makes her talent even more incredible, you know, to realize what she was going through as a woman, and as a daughter and a mother and a family member, you know. Balancing that and balancing the tone was something that Daysha and I worked with through the end of the edit. So that was a real process, and we took it very seriously, and we balanced it very carefully. I mean, that's just the truth. We you know, we had to kind of figure out how we wanted it to feel, and still to make it this beautiful, uplifting tribute, while not shying away from what made her human, the other parts of her story as a woman.
And when one of Kasi's many talents is she can watch the film objectively, like the 80th time. And I don't necessarily have that. I sometimes am like, I don't know if I'm feeling, you know, the same way we were feeling in the last cut, because it became very delicate, especially towards the end. It was like the balance has to feel balanced. It has to feel like we're getting enough of a celebration of this woman, and also being honest about the struggles that she went through. So it was very, very delicate. If we removed something or put something back in, we had to watch the whole thing all over again, just to make sure it still felt correct, and like we were delivering a film that lets you do both, right? Because it's not just, like you said, it's not just a concert film, and it's not a film about a woman with an addiction. It's a film about Whitney Houston, you know, the person and all of the things Kasi listed, you know, and so we had to make sure it was very much both, you know, and I think we got there in the end, but it was a ride. It was a ride.
I just think it's so unique, and I just have to say this. I mean, first of all, to have these women, all of us together, is very unique on a film. And then I know, you know, Whitney would be very happy that it was women of color, that the director, editor, and composer, you know, because she was such a big advocate in terms of that, and making sure, you know, at a very, very different time. So I just am curious for myself in terms of that dynamic, because is it getting more frequent that you can actually have a whole crew that really has the same kind of cultural perspective on a film?
I think this was historic, certainly on a film of this size. It was historic that to have a, you know, Black woman editor, director, and composer. And, you know, I'm extremely proud of that. I think it was very appropriate to this story, a story about an amazing Black woman, you know, and it was thrilling. It was thrilling to be able to hire these two incredibly talented women, and for us all to work together.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that you can get without that. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's not to your point, it's not common. It's, you know, even I know a lot of editors who look at my staff, even just my post staff that I hire, because I try to give as many opportunities to Black assistant editors and VFX editors who are trying to get their foot in, trying to get credits and trying to get their foot in the door. And they you know, they are just like shocked when they see the staff, and they're like, as much progress has been made, you know, they will say every show I've been on has just been white men, maybe a white woman every now and then. And they're so it's not very common, but one of the best parts of being in my seat is that I get to try to make it more common. I get to hire who I want to hire on my team. And Kasi gets to hire Chanda, and we get to try to, you know, be intentional with that, especially on a film like this, where we felt like our voices were necessary. It was necessary. It was necessary to have Chanda. It was necessary to have me. It was necessary to have my assistants. Like it was necessary.
And I have to say for myself, it was the most diverse crew I think I've ever worked with, in terms of the customers, you know, the crew, everybody, you know, the ADs, everyone. So it really felt like a new day that was, you know, really fun and just wonderful, you know.
Well,
I had worked with Whitney on The Bodyguard, so I was very thrilled to be able to work on this, you know.
Yeah.
So I know I got kind of, I don't want to say grandfathered in, but in a sense, you know, like, oh, okay. But
That connection was important.
Yeah, it was important.
Mm-hmm.
It was important. And it was also, but all those elements was just so, I'm so glad this interview is going out during, you know, in February, because I think it is a new day. It can be a better day. I'm not saying it's not, but I think it's definitely, this was a wonderful experience about that. You know what I mean? To just, otherwise it would have been very odd. And I don't think the film would have been as good.
Agreed.
Well,
I agree.
no question about that.
But speaking of which, Chanda, I wanted to ask you, you know, coming from the women in film perspective, part of our mandate is to get to parity, right? And to get to having equal representation, or the representation that is proportionate to our world showing up in our industry. And we know music and composing in particular is one of those fields where we got a long way to go, and particularly for women of color. But I would love to hear a little bit about your journey in this space. And obviously you have these incredible supportive women around you, but moving through up to this point, tell us a little bit about, you know, how you got here and what you see next for women rising and composing.
Well, I'll try to keep it very, very short. So for me, I would say that my professional career started quite a long time ago, 19 years ago. In 19 years, I have seen personally leaps and bounds in opportunities for women composers and opportunities for women composers of color, which is, you know, a set of circumstances all on its own. And I got to say, I'm very hopeful, very, very hopeful. Now more than ever, a lot more women are getting meetings. I mean, we weren't even getting meetings before, meetings with executives at studios, and heads of music at studios, and getting opportunities to do big orchestral scores as well as small artsy scores. I mean, anything. I am seeing, at least personally with me, no pigeonholing. You know, people aren't expecting me to do only the hip hop movie, which is fine. You know, nothing wrong with that. But I like the fact that people are asking for a wide range, a very wide range of musical styles. And it just really wasn't like that until probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Really, it's really been that recent for
Well,
like women composers.
And you could just see the impact is been fast and furious, and that's why it is more, you know, it's like, oh, of course we're going to do this. It was just like there was just a tipping point, and then it was
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, let's, and I do think just in terms of new ideas, new vitality, new things, nobody wants to go to the same short list.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because
There
it's
seems to
like,
be
how
like
is
a
it
hump.
relevant? You know what I mean? It's just like a safety factor, but it's not really safe, you know?
Yeah.
And all I can say is Chanda came with such a huge recommendation from the composers and Sony and filmmakers. It was, you know, it was kind of like, I don't know, I mean, you know.
It's been wonderful, really, really.
Most
And
deserving opportunity is when you're ready, and also when the industry's ready.
exactly.
And they were
Exactly.
overdue. They were way overdue.
Way overdue, way overdue. But yeah, lots to be grateful for. And you know, I definitely am looking forward to more progress in the area. More women composers, definitely. Let's go. More composers of color, definitely. Let's go. So
Just different voices too, and different, you know,
yes.
all of that, you know, that's what's so exciting. You know, you get new things and new perspectives, and it makes better product.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
does. And people are delighted by something that's in their ears fresh. I mean, it's just more fun. Why not? Let's go.
And Kasi, I mean, also given your prolific career and how long you've been working as a director, what are you seeing right now, and what are you hopeful about for the future of this filmmaking?
I mean, it's gone through enormous changes since I first started. I mean, I started, you know, my first film is celebrating its 25th anniversary, right? So at that time, there just weren't very many of us. I mean, we could count them. I think we used to play like a drinking game, like count the women directors and, you know, how many shots do you take? And we could survive it. You know what I mean? Now, there's so many wonderfully talented women, and I teach at a film school, NYU grad film school, and you know, my classes are every year. I have many wonderfully talented filmmakers of color, women of color, and so I'm very, very encouraged. It keeps me encouraged. On the other hand, you know, I'm always disappointed in well, award season has been a little disappointing in terms of women. But this year was encouraging, right? Lots of films by women, you know, lots of films by filmmakers of color, and wonderful films, you know, so I'm both encouraged, and like Chanda says, let's go, like
Yes.
more, you know, we need more recognition, more respect, recognition, more parity. This is essential. And so I'm both encouraged and ever optimistic, and also frustrated.
think it is the nature of the space, right? And being creatives, but I share your optimism, and I think we have the wind at our back. So let's keep it going. As we close out, I'd love to ask each of you, we are a resource providing organization, and many people who are new to all of your fields who are looking for their next steps in their careers. What are you, if you have proteges or younger people that you're working with, what are you telling them right now? What are you advising them to do or giving them additional optimism about?
Well, I tell people that, you know, that actually the world is looking for them. Okay. You know, when I started out, they weren't necessarily looking for me. But now really, like you said, everybody, like Maureen was saying, you want freshness, fresh perspectives. And I really think that we're in a time where I can honestly say to my students, my most talented students, you know, the world is your oyster. We need you. And people are starting to realize that. And, you know, go take it by the horns and do your thing.
Yeah, and it's mercenary by the industry. I'd love to say it's out of like some, you know, and I like to think like, yes, it's doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing because they're making money. It's always the right thing when you can cash the check and you're making money and the company's happy. And I think that's what the industry as a whole was just saying, oh my God, we've had these resources right here. And yeah, let's go. What do you got? What idea you got? What's fresh perspective that you got? And that's how you keep an industry breathing and alive. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, I always tell the youngins that
You're kind of a youngin yourself, honey.
I appreciate that. I just found out how old I'm turning next year, and it shocked me. It shocked me. I'm not gonna lie.
Gotta get used to that because we're all shocked.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot. I always tell them to save their money. It's the first thing I tell them to do, because the less you're worried about on that end, the more you, the hungrier you get, and the more you're willing to take bigger risks, right? Because when I started out, I didn't have any safety net. I had nothing, so it's just me. I have nothing. It's just me, and I think that I still bet on myself, and I took tons of leaps of faith and just went for it. But I spent 7 years in reality TV, living in a little bungalow, saving my money so that when I moved to scripted, I was okay if I didn't have a job. And then I think I also tell them, you know, in this industry, kind of like Maureen was saying, nobody's really going to give you anything. So you have to go out there and take it, and you have to be prepared. You have to stay ready. It's not just about networking, because you can network your way into a position that you're not ready for and lose it. So I think you have to study your craft, study editing, study the films you love, what's great about them, learn from them, you know, meet people, and just study. And when it's your time, you'll be ready, and you'll knock it out the park.
Exactly that. That is exactly what I tell younger composers, especially young women composers. Do the work. Do the work first and foremost, by any means necessary. You don't have a budget for an orchestra. I mean, if you play a bunch of instruments, record yourself over and over and over, fake it, you know. Saving your money, yes. I feel like I'm the poster child of having a 9-to-5 to save my own money, to finally be able to open my own commercial studio after 10 years of having a job to pay the bills. But at the same time, still doing the work, doing any independent film that I can get my hands on, that I love, that I think that I could really contribute to. And so after a while, after years of just doing the work and saving your money, suddenly you have like hours of music on Spotify and your own commercial studio. And then when the opportunity hit, oh, wow, look, I have like over a decade of experience behind me. I'm ready. There's, you know, and I didn't have a safety net either. So, you know, you got to just get out there and do it. And also another thing that is an important topic that has been brought up with a lot of younger women composers, is the idea of, will I be able to have a career and a family? That is a big thing, especially with composers. I know personally some women composers who have hid the fact that they were pregnant with their children. I have found that the environment is very different now. I've been on meetings with some very big producers, and my son with his big fro like walks by and they are like, hey, you know, so it is, yes, live your life, you know, as you see fit, and do the work. So
Do the work.
yes.
Do the work. I mean, I say that to students if they want to get into music and music supervision. I'm like, if you're in school, you know, someone's making a film, help them.
Yes.
Go start collecting credits, start collecting those relationships. You know, Chanda will tell you a lot of composers working with directors because they worked with them in school. And
Exactly.
they go, okay, you know what you're doing, I'm sticking with you. Okay. You know,
Yeah.
and that's it. And it may take them like 10 years, 15 years to get their career going, but you're their guy or you're their
And
guy.
I think
You know what I
because
mean?
of
That's
social
it.
media, there's like a really big emphasis on branding yourself now as a young person, but the brand doesn't matter if there's no work
Exactly.
to back it up. So it's like you can build all of that if you want to, but if you come to me with no work, I can't, there's nothing I can do for you. So do
Exactly.
the work is the bottom
Yeah,
You're
line.
I'm still,
creating the
I think I'm
opportunity
still
without the
working on getting
readiness.
a brand, right?
Right. Yeah,
Working.
right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Yeah, it's like you better be ready. That's what I always tell them. You know, you better be ready because if somebody throws you the ball, you need to catch it and run, you know? And so I mean,
Mhm.
that's where luck is, right? At the intersection of readiness and opportunity. So the readiness is supremely important.
Right.
Well, thank you all so much. We know Whitney certainly did the work and we live in the light of her legacy. Thank you all so much for bringing this incredible film to us. And we are privileged and honored to be lifting up both her work and legacy and you all. And we're so excited to see what your future projects are. Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody is available on digital now and available on Blu-ray and DVD on February 28th. We thank Sony so much for this opportunity and this conversation, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon.